Good afternoon, everyone. Could I encourage those at the back to come further forward? Obviously, maintain some social distancing, but please, it'd be nice that we have a feeling of all being in the same meeting. So I would encourage you to come forward so that we can have an interactive discussion when we come to the panel discussion a little later. So I'm David Cooper, the Deputy Executive Secretary, and representing here Elizabeth Marema, the Executive Secretary, and it's a pleasure to open this information session on the Sharm El-Sheikh to Kunming Action Agenda for Nature and People. And as you may know, this was an initiative that was launched by the government of Egypt as the COP14 presidency, the government of China as the COP15 presidency, and the Secretariat in Sharm El-Sheikh during COP14 in 2018, long time ago. And of course, the purpose of this is to mobilize all of society, all actors across all sectors, business, subnational governments, indigenous peoples and local communities, civil society, in the efforts that we will need to implement the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework, achieve those goals and targets that have been negotiated, and help to contribute towards the 2050 agenda of living in harmony with nature. We also hope that the momentum of the commitments made by these various actors as we lead up to the second part of COP15 can also help give momentum to the negotiations themselves, in a sense, to provide some down payments, if you like, on the work, the actions, the commitments that will be needed to achieve those 2030 goals and that those 2030 targets and those 2050 goals. We know several parties are also actively supporting this initiative. And I'm very pleased that we have here at the front of the room today representatives of the presidencies of COP15 and COP14, and of course our co-chairs of the post-2020 working group, and also Manuel Pulgar, who is going to chair this session. As you, I'm sure, will know, Manuel was the president of Climate Change COP20 as the Minister of the Environment for Peru at the time, and he then led the development of the Lima to Paris Action Agenda. And it was that Lima to Paris Action Agenda that inspired really this action agenda, the Sharm El-Sheikh to Kunming Action Agenda for Nature and People. So we're very pleased and privileged to have Manuel here to facilitate today's discussions, and I will now hand over to Manuel to lead us through this session. Thank you.
Thank you very much, David, and thank you to you all for being here, to our distinguished colleagues here in the front table, and to you all for being part of this. So as David mentioned, I will moderate today's session, that it is about the Sharm El-Sheikh to Kunming Action Agenda. But before of leaving the floor to our distinguished colleagues in the table, I would like to make short reflections from my heart to your heart, because it is very important to identify, to recognize why it is needed an action agenda for the global biodiversity framework. And let me start by saying that when I was planning some words, some openings for today's session, I was thinking what to say. And I decided to start this reflection by asking ourselves, why are we here? Why are we here in Nairobi for a week? And it is clear, we know that we are here to help to support the process as delegates of the parties to move the process towards a strong COP15 with a strong outcome. That means a really good global biodiversity framework. But let me say that despite that is the main reason, in my point of view, we are here for something else. We are here to have something that it should be seen beyond the text. So it is not just about a text. We are sure we will get a text by the end of this year. We will have a GBF by the end of this year. But we are not looking for written things in a document called the GBF. We are planning to be key actors in a time in which we are shifting the paradigm. We are looking to have the CBD and the GBF as a key pillar towards our sustainable objective. We are here to work based on the whole of society approach to bring all the actors into the table, parties and non-parties. We are here to show that there is no way to achieve our climate objective if it is not by, on the other side, achieve our nature objective. We are here to change the narrative, to move the needle, to be part of this new vision of the planet, to make the planet a more sustainable world. And if you agree with that reflection, the point it is that we should start to think on how are we planning to implement the GBF. Again, it is not just a text. It is how can we make that text an actionable piece? How can we make that text something that it could be implemented, not only in the global arena, mostly in the domestic one, mostly in those important landscapes that are key for keeping our biodiversity, our healthy biodiversity. Also, it should be related to people and their rights. It should be related to development. So my point is that if we start to think on how to implement the GBF, it is clear that that won't be possible by not having in the same table the non-parties stakeholders or non-state actors. It is the only way. Those actors are going to implement, to connect the objective with clear actions. Those actors are going to connect nature with the economy. Those actors are going to connect nature with the social demands. There are no alternatives. We do need to have a clear action agenda for nature. We do need to have a clear action agenda for implementing the GBF. And in that sense, I would like to transmit our gratitude to the government of Egypt and to the government of China that have shown their strong commitment to do that, to convene and to bring non-state actors into the table. For sure, we recognize that this is a party-driven process. That won't change. This should continue being a party-driven process. Are finally governments who are going to take decisions. But to implement and to mobilize actions, we do need to have the non-party stakeholders, the non-state actors. That means civil society, that means indigenous people, that means the business sector, the financial sector, the academia, the whole of society working together towards our collective objective. Let me finish by saying, I love to use the analogy of the solar system. The solar system, it has been gotten by a long process of many factors. For sure, our solar system has as a key element the main star, our sun. We are here in the discussing the GBF to define a strong main star, our sun. But that won't be enough. We do need to have gravitational forces to align all the actors into the same objective. And that is why we do need to have the non-party stakeholders. We do need to connect with social demands, with the economy. We do need to mobilize resources. We do need to define targets. We do need to have countries implementing what it will be adopted by the GBF in the respective countries. And we do need to enable conditions to do that. So thank you for being part of this endeavor. Thank you for recognizing the importance of an action agenda for the CBD, because it is the only way that we will get success as we are wishing it should be. Having said that, now I would like to give the floor to Dr. Hamdallah Sedan from the COP14 presidency from Egypt. Dr. Hamdallah, please, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Emmanuel. It is a pleasure for COP14 presidency to convene this session with the People's Republic of China COP15 presidency, the co-chairs of the open-ended working group on the post-2020 global biodiversity framework, the CBD Secretariat, and the Friends of Action. It is also a pleasure to have the meeting here in this room, where the Convention on Biological Diversity was conceived, born, and its text was adopted. It was adopted in this same room 30 years ago. And in fact, non-state actors played a very prominent role during the negotiation of the convention. There were many sticky and difficult points, and they played very constructive role. And in fact, they helped a lot until the convention was adopted. And they played the same role, in fact, during the negotiation and adoption of the protocols, whether the Biosafety Protocol or the Nagoya Protocol on Access and Benefit Sharing. You know, throughout the decades, we have called attention to the critical rate of biodiversity loss and decline, examining and exposing the causes, strengthening our knowledge, capacities, and scientific evidence, and promoting partnerships and solutions to reach our shared goals. In fact, during the negotiation of the convention, one question used to be asked everywhere in the press, in all the communities: what is biological diversity? It was a new terminology. Very few knew about what does this mean. In fact, very few scientists. But now we are very pleased that everybody talks about biological diversity and everybody knows something about biological diversity. However, as stressed at COP14 in Sharm El-Sheikh, action to halt and reverse the loss of biodiversity will require action from all sectors of society, not only parties, in the short and the long term. Our behaviors, values, and actions must reflect our aspiration for a world that is fair, equitable, inclusive, resilient, and sustainable. For this to take effect, the political determination that parties agreed at COP14 in Sharm El-Sheikh must be fostered by a clear vision, measurable actions, and the necessary resources, tools, mechanisms, and partners for urgent, integrated, and scalable implementation of the Convention and its strategies. Non-state actors, from the indigenous peoples and local communities to business and the financial sectors to youth, women's groups, academia, the civil society, are important partners of the post-2020 global biodiversity framework. Not only important, but essential. Without them, the framework will not be implemented, I can assure you. Together with subnational actors, non-state actors have been widely recognized in preparation of the framework. You are here, in fact, making a lot of support to the development of the framework and should be involved in its implementation. And in accordance with the framework's theory of change, a whole of government and the whole of society approach is required to ensure the necessary transitions to realize the 2050 vision of living in harmony with nature. To complement government actions, at COP13 in 2018 in Sharm El-Sheikh, to Kunming Action Agenda for Nature and People, referred to as Action Agenda, was launched. Its role is to raise public and policy awareness on biodiversity action, inspiring actors' engagement and catalyzing upward cycles of ambition and action to support the implementation to 2030 and beyond. Building on the vision of the Conference of the Parties Presidencies, the past years have witnessed increasing support benefiting from the Friends of Action Group to champion the biodiversity commitment and actions among broader networks. Our work has led to a range of commitments by sub and non-state actors across sectors, including agriculture, health, finance, and other productive areas, showing actions to transition away from nature-harming activities toward practical and positive shift. Expanding collaboration in support of the action agenda must continue. Count on Egypt's support to the action agenda to journey from Sharm El-Sheikh to COP15 and Kunming and beyond. It should not stop at Kunming. It will continue and should continue. I invite your collaboration and experiences to strengthen collective action for nature and people. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hamdallah Sedan, and thank you to Egypt for your country commitment to a strong CBD and a strong GBF. So now I have the pleasure to introduce Dr. Gumei Xu from the COP15 presidency from China. Dr. Gumei Xu, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Manu. It is a great pleasure to organize this important event with Egypt and the CBD Secretariat. Since the launch of the action agenda jointly by Egypt, China, and ICBD in 2018, my government has remained actively engaged in our capacity as COP15 presidency. Our approach has included activities responding to COP Decision 14/13/4 under the 2021 Kunming Ministerial Declaration to champion further momentum on the road to COP15 We are encouraged by the increasing commitment on biodiversity among non-state actors. At COP15 many stakeholders pledged commitments using the action agenda as a vehicle for non-state actors to support the implementation of the post-2020 biodiversity framework. Up to now, more than 400 commitments have been collected on the action agenda platform for the convention website. COP15 organized a two-day NGO forum in September 2021 with the Civil Society Alliance for Biodiversity Conservation, reaching more than 400 participants and generating significant commitment for action on biodiversity. Non-state actors announced individual commitment through their action agenda and signed their joint call towards Kunming, my comments for nature. From the financial sector, a 45-member partnership on biodiversity and finance led by the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, AIIB, and Central Asia Regional Economic Cooperation Institute, CARIC, the Paulson Institute, WRI, and many others announced their commitment to prevent and mitigate biodiversity risks from investment and trade, and to mobilize financial resources and tools to close the funding gap towards a nature-friendly future. Further commitments were received from actors working on conservation initiatives, technology, and big data. COP15 revealed the willingness and relevance of non-state actors in the post-2020 process. And from the business sectors, China launched China Business and Biodiversity Partnership, CBBP, to contribute to CBD's Global Partnership for Business and Biodiversity. CBBP actually has engaged a lot of business sectors. Building on the theme of COP15, ecological civilization, building a shared future for all life on Earth, China recognized the importance of convening key actors to help implement the goals and targets of the post-2020 framework. We will continue to mobilize all forces to promote active engagement of all stakeholders and make our contribution to the implementation of the action agenda in line with COP decisions and also past ministerial declarations. We look forward to continue to enhance the action agenda, follow up and track the progress of commitment, and form a synergy of actions by all parties, thereby supporting the role of non-state actors in the process of the convention and jointly enrich the global biodiversity governance. I thank you, Manuel, for championing the very important action agenda, reinforcing the role of non-state actors in the lead to COP15. I thank you for your attention. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Gumei Su, and our recognition to Egypt and to China for their commitment with the action agenda. And also let me add our recognition and gratitude to the CBD Secretariat, to the Secretary Elizabeth Marema, to the Deputy Executive Secretary David Cooper, and to the two co-chairs of the working group, Basil Van Havre and Mr. Francis Okwal, the two co-chairs. Thank you very much to you all. So now I would like to give the floor to Mr. Basil Van Havre, that it is one of the co-chairs of the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework. Basil, you have the floor.
Thank you, Manuel. How could I say no when you call me to do this? In our busy days, we always have a lot of calls with different people, but a call from Manuel is always a pleasure because it is something that will give you energy for the day. So let's hope and it will give us energy for the rest of the week. Participation of non-state actors. When we got the decision that created the process that Francis and I are leading, we were given 14 principles. And one of those principles is to have an inclusive framework. And that has led to that notion of creating a framework for all. That has been reinforced from the diagnostic that we've done from the previous framework that told us that if we wanted to be successful, not only did we need to have the signature of government at the bottom of a piece of paper, what we needed is the heart of every part of society. And some of you may have heard me talking about that, but my dream, and it is a dream, is to see the signature of this framework. You normally see the image in the newspaper of the negotiators with his collaborators standing and clapping on the podium. What I would like to see is to see representative of every part of society holding hands together on the podium. And as we move forward, what does that mean? That means commitment and action. Ms. Gourmet and others have talked about the Sharm El-Sheikh to Kunming action agenda and the many commitment that has been done. So I don't need to repeat that. I'll focus on other part of the integration and action. All of you from the other part of society are bringing skills and knowledge to this negotiation. Skills and knowledge that are essential. Be it traditional knowledge, be it knowledge coming from your familiarity with performance management system, or other parts that are essential to us. So Francis and I not only welcome your input, we need your input. I've been very interestingly surprised by the number of non-state institutions that have been knocking on my door. There is clearly a movement taking place. I am seeing that particularly the business and the finance sector, I've learned through the climate change process. They understand how we work in the multilateral system, and they want to jumpstart us and basically are putting challenge to us. I can see now a number and many parts of the society beyond your traditional partners of NGOs and civil society coming here with very clear and very effective language and very organized way to participate. This is an asset we have in the CBD. So we encourage you to continue, be forceful, engage us. Don't make our life easy, make it easy for you. And we will welcome that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Basile, and thank you for your kindly words. Now I would like to give the floor to Mr. Francis Ockwell, co-chair of the OEWG of the Post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework. Francis, you have the floor.
Thank you. I think most of the things have actually been said, and I will therefore be very brief. But first, I think what we are all right now preoccupied with is getting the framework adopted. We know that because you can see the progress, how we are moving on from here. The next question will be, is that all we want? Because immediately that framework is adopted, if it is not implemented, then what will all this effort be about? It will just be wasted time, wasted energy, and yet we are all looking forward to that framework changing issues on biodiversity. So implementation, as you see it here, is going to be a very, very critical aspect of post-2020. We cannot just give this just a word of mouth talking implementation, and nothing happens about it. So that's why then when you're looking at the implementation, you cannot just take it only to government. The non-state actors are very, very important. At a national level, you see all the role that they play. Issues on resource mobilization, you cannot delink them from that. They have a critical role to play. They have the resources. How do we tap on from there? These stakeholders we are calling non-state actors, they have the money. Capacity building, you're talking about academia and others. Where are the skills? You see, we are talking of training people in certain skills. The academia and others, they have what you need. How do you bring them on board? What about even when it comes to reporting? Like Shabazz was saying, some data may not be with you. It may be with a non-state actor. But how do you bring it? How do you collaborate? So partnership with these people is going to be very important. In fact, the framework we are working on is for all, because biodiversity is for all. So I would just want to end by saying that we can't do this as parties alone. There will be a big gap in terms of trying to meet all these challenges, all these expectations. So at country level, I think it will be up to the governments to see how they involve the non-state actors. Perhaps situations are not so uniform everywhere in all parts of the world, how to involve non-state actors. They may vary from country to country, but the bottom line is bring them on board, because there is something that they have that can help us strengthen implementation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Francis, and fully agree. Implementation, it is not just about governments and the importance of non-state actors for resource mobilization, for capacity building, among many other objectives. So what a great segue to move into the interventions of those non-party stakeholders. So we will have panelists from the cities, from the business sector, from the indigenous peoples, from a public or governmental agency, and from the financial sector. So let me start with Mrs. Ingrid Katzi, Director of Biodiversity, Nature and Health, Local Government for Sustainability, Global Cities Biodiversity Center, Iucn. It is important the role that cities are playing in achieving our collective vision towards a sustainable planet. Ingrid, you have the floor.
Sorry, thank you very much to the hosts. I want to clarify that I'm here not on behalf of Iucn, but on behalf of Cities with Nature and Regions with Nature, which is a partnership initiative. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the action platform that we've created for cities and subnational governments. This is something that came in direct response to the call that the various dignitaries have just referred to now in Sharm El-Sheikh in 2018. And we created this platform so that it would be a place where cities and subnational governments could make their commitments. If I could have my next slide, please. I think the interesting thing about cities and subnational governments is that they're not parties to the convention, but they are part of government. And for the purposes of this exercise here, they are non-state actors, and they're also very close to communities, local communities, but to local businesses, etc. And the significance of having a platform like this is it is reflected and recognized in the plan of action, which we hope will be adopted at COP15 later this year. But the other thing that I think is very important is that from the beginning, we've aligned and collaborated very closely with the action agenda when it's first started off to make sure that we're singing from the same hymn sheet, that we are able to support and complement the work that's being done at the action agenda and also subsequently the WCMC platform. And something else that I think, which I want to emphasize that's really important here, is the fact that we have seen already that the functionality that's included in this action platform to be able to report and track progress against commitments is an important tool that we are hoping can feed into the parties' national reports. If you can move me to the next slide. And what I'm going to do now in the couple of slides that follow is just very quickly to show you the level of ambition that has already come out. So, for example, you can see that on the platform we have already 62 countries represented by cities and subnational governments. The number of cities and states and provinces that are signing up daily is growing daily. And there are a lot of governors and mayors that are making commitments around how important a tool like this is to capture the action. Next slide, please. We have already on the platform, the action platform was only launched in Geneva, and in that time we've already got 15 cities big and small from all over the world, and you'll see some of them now, that have already started actively engaging. And when I say actively engaging, this is not just a high-level commitment that they've made, such as those cities that have signed on to the platform and the states that have signed on, but where they've actually taken the time to go and see what their targets are, what their commitments are, and many of them have already started implementing these actions. So if you move to the next slide, and I'm just going to turn so that I can see. These are some of the examples, and I've tried to show you a sort of a geographic representation of what we are already seeing on the platform. So we've got European cities, we've got mayors, we've got governors, all making commitments and coming out with statements around how important it is to take action at the local or subnational level in order to be able to make sure that the GBF is successfully implemented. Next slide. This is an actual example. I've just taken a snapshot from the action platform. You can see it's a relatively small city in Uganda. It's actually a little municipality, and they have chosen to take action in respect of restoring ecosystems. And just quickly, the action platform actually is aligned also to the 2030 action targets. Next slide. And this is another one from Europe. You can just move through the slides. What I'm just trying to show is as I said, the geographic representation and the different types of activities that we see. What we're also beginning to see is, for example, a subnational government like Scotland, as well as some of the cities in Scotland are beginning to take action together. Next slide. And this, I think, is my last slide, just to show you again the level of ambition and the commitment. And I want to stress is that what we're seeing at the subnational levels is not just commitments, but actual actions that are already starting to take place. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ingrid, for those good examples of commitments by the cities. Now I would like to turn and to give the floor to Mr. Michael Ofusene-Wise, Climate and Nature Manager from Business for Nature. Michael, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Manuel. I am speaking on behalf of the Business for Nature Coalition. We bring over 75 business and conservation organizations together with forward-thinking companies to demonstrate and amplify a credible business voice and action on nature. Through our coalition, more than 1,100 businesses with a combined revenue of over $5 trillion are calling for governments to adopt ambitious policies to halt and reverse nature loss. This is because nature loss is putting our economies at risk. To be able to deliver on the targets being negotiated here under the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework, we need to adopt a whole society approach. We are in this together. We either all win or we all lose. And this means we need all hands on deck with concrete actions from all stakeholders, including business. Here in Nairobi, progressive businesses are calling for a Target 15 that includes mandatory requirements for businesses and financial institutions to assess and disclose their impacts and dependencies on nature that incentivizes business to reduce negative impacts by at least half and increase positive impacts. Businesses are already working with policymakers in various regions and at national level on how best to deliver the targets of the agreement. And my colleague, Saeed from DHI Water Environment Malaysia, will get on stage very shortly to provide more practical details on how they're engaging the Malaysian government. Businesses understand that once adopted, the framework will translate into policies and regulations at a national level that will have direct consequences on their operations. They also understand that they have the responsibility to support the parties in implementation of the framework by adapting their business models to help meet the challenge of delivering a nature-positive net zero, and equitable future. And we are starting to see evidence of action. Thousands of businesses are acting and looking to scale and speed up their efforts. This is why it is crucial for governments to recognize these commitments and actions from business and create an efficient action agenda platform to engage even more businesses on this journey. Learning from the UN climate change process, business played a key role in delivering the Paris Agreement, and they continue to play a significant role in implementing concrete actions to deliver a 1.5-degree future. At Glasgow, at COP26, we saw an unprecedented number of business actions and initiatives through the Marrakesh Partnership for Global Climate Action and the Race to Zero campaigns, all of which, of course, was inspired by the Lima Paris Agenda. Therefore, providing a bridge between parties and non-state actors under the CBD Convention will help forge a collective path to achieve a nature-positive future. The action agenda should showcase concrete nature commitments and actions from business as well as other non-state actors in a way that supports governments to deliver a transformative post-2020 framework. Delegates, this is a key moment for you to bring all relevant actors to support the delivery of this framework. We urge you to endorse an action platform that encourages non-state actors to contribute meaningfully to the implementation of the framework through their commitments and actions. And leading businesses stand ready to support the implementation of the framework. But this will be successful with proper engagement from all stakeholders to drive ownership and accountability. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michael, and thank you for the commitment of the business sector, for the creation of the coalition, and for us to mobilize actions toward the fulfillment of the CBD and GBF objective. Now let me turn into Mrs. Yoyi Carino Ibaloy Igorot from the Cordillera, Philippines, representing the indigenous peoples. So Yoyi, you have the floor.
Thank you very much for this opportunity to present on behalf of the IIFB. IIFB is a global network of indigenous peoples and local communities participating as important actors in the CBD processes. Having discussed the action agenda for nature and peoples, IIFB is making a collective commitment to continue in the production of local biodiversity outlooks, the perspectives of indigenous peoples and local communities on what is emerging as our post-2020 biodiversity strategy. I'm sorry, you have the wrong slides. Maybe I'll just have my speaking notes. Okay. Local biodiversity outlooks was first launched during COP13 held in Mexico in 2016 as a complementary publication to GBO4. CBD parties welcomed the report and requested that a second edition be prepared to accompany GBO5. And since then, working on LBO has become an important undertaking for IPLCs in our engagement with the whole of the CBD, with the parties, the secretariat, scientists, civil society, and many other actors. LBO highlights over 50 stories by indigenous peoples and local community authors from around the world, presenting our perspectives and experiences on the current social ecological crisis and our solutions across biodiversity, climate change, and sustainable development. The report also identifies 6 critical transitions required towards achieving the 2050 vision. But I want to highlight some of the messages that arose from that report, which are very important for our action agenda. First, The neglect and underreporting of traditional knowledge and customary sustainable use in the present strategy meant that only 10% of parties were engaging IPLCs in their NBSAPs. Reporting has been piecemeal, and indicators on traditional knowledge have not been used. The ongoing disregard of these vital contributions of IPLCs constitutes a major missed opportunity, affecting the underachievement of all the past 20 Aichi biodiversity targets. Therefore, putting the cultures and rights of IPLCs at the heart of the 2050 biodiversity strategy would deliver sustainable livelihoods and well-being and positive outcomes for biodiversity, climate, and sustainable development. The report identifies 6 critical transitions required towards the 2050 vision, and this frames many of our commitments and actions taking place on the ground. First, land, securing land rights and customary tenure of indigenous peoples and local communities. Second, revitalizing indigenous and local food systems. Third, culture, recognizing and respecting the diverse ways of knowing and doing. Economies, sustainable use of resources and the flourishing of diverse local economies and customary sustainable use. And finally, rewarding effective indigenous people solutions and stop financing destruction. So LBO2 has an interactive website where all of these stories are highlighted, and we can locate these stories based on region, country, and locality, as well as important themes under the strategy. So just linking this now to our action agenda, IAFB has been participating in the post-2020 deliberations on options to enhance planning, monitoring, and review. And we want very much that our actions are, both our ambitions as well as the progress we are making will be reflected in national reports as well as global reporting. And the IIFB has a working group on indicators, which is developing guidance for our entire network on community-based monitoring and information systems, using what will emerge as the relevant headline, component, and complementary indicators. So this is how we hope to be interfacing with the platform and how we are seeking the support for parties for what we have planned in the coming decades. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Joji, and thank you for reminding us that just 10% of MBSAPs are reflecting traditional knowledge. But also let me remind you that I think it was in the IPCC Working Group 2 report, traditional knowledge, it has been recognized at the same level than science, but it is an important baseline to continue recognizing traditional knowledge for our actions. So now let me move into Mr. Syed Mosari Hazari, Deputy Head Ecology and Environment Department from DHI Water and Environment from Malaysia. So Syed, please, you have the floor.
Thank you, Manuel. My name is Syed Hazari. I'm currently Deputy Head of DHI Water and Environment, an organization based in Malaysia, and I'm also the interim chair to the Malaysia Platform for Business and Biodiversity, or MPBB. So today, my focus will be on national level implementation of the whole of society approach in regards to non-state actor actions in the implementation of biodiversity conservation and mainstreaming, particularly the post-2020 GBF. So my organization started an initiative focusing on the conservation and mainstreaming of biodiversity by the business and private sector in Malaysia back in 4 to 5 years ago. We believe that as a mega diverse country, Malaysia should apply the whole of society approach when it comes to biodiversity management, and the private sector should be involved as well in policymaking. So for this, we aligned our initiative with the objectives of the CBD and the aspirations of Malaysia's National Policy on Biological Diversity, or NPBD, which is our NBSAP. We have been very instrumental with the GBF, particularly the role of business in the implementation of the global framework at the national level. So since then, we have several activities that have been carried out focusing on on the GBF. So one of them will be the Biodiversity Forum for Business that we did in early 2020, right before the pandemic, that officially gave birth to the idea of having a platform for business, which is the MPBB. So the MPBB, just briefly, is intended as a platform for the Malaysian business and private sector community to discuss, share, and collaborate on issues related to biodiversity conservation and its mainstreaming, especially to support the implementation of the national policy. It is a platform to showcase the private sector's role beyond to traditional financial contributions. We also intended to be a bridge to the government and the private sector so they could communicate better. So when we approached the government in 2019 via the Ministry of Energy and Natural Resources, or KETSA, which is the national focal point for CBD, the idea to have the platform was received positively. The minister at that time endorsed the MPBB, so we have a very close collaboration with the government via KETSA. And apart from this platform, the Malaysian government also has been trying to have the private sector to be involved in policy making. For example, the Malaysia's National Biodiversity Roundtable, or NBR, is a national platform that is led by civil society and the private sector in Malaysia that provides technical advice and support to the ministry and the National Steering Committee on the policy in the policies implementation and monitoring. So as of January 2022, I'm an elected member of the roundtable and he has met a few times already. When in regards to the GBF, particularly Target 15, the ministry has been very supportive in listening to the inputs of the business in Malaysia, and that has been very positive. It was also interesting to note that the businesses in Malaysia has also agreed to carry out mandatory disclosure, although they have requested it is done gradually with 7 terms being clearly defined. This was based on the consultation that the MPBB carried out a week before WG2020-4. So I think I will end with the assurance to parties and everyone that a paradigm shift has occurred within the business and private sector community, particularly in Malaysia, across all sectors. You have now a group of people who are already convinced by the national and global biodiversity crisis, convinced that business plays a role in the problem, and convinced that business plays a role in the solution. I think the community calls for a transformative change that challenges the status quo. It wants its voice heard, and the community wishes for a meaningful and substantive role in supporting evidence of what can be done and how it can be a powerful agent for change. Thank you.
Thank you, Syed, and thank you for reminding us the whole of society concept as part of the Malaysian policy. So now let me finish by introducing Mr. Suresh Weransinghe, Head of EU and International Public Affairs at Aviva, and from the Finance for Biodiversity Foundation. So Suresh, you have the floor.
Thank you, Manuel. So as Manuel said, I am from Aviva, the UK insurer and asset manager, but I'm here today representing the Finance for Biodiversity Foundation. We are 100 financial institutions from across the world that have made a pledge to commit to positive action on biodiversity. And as a member of this growing coalition, we recognise the importance of our biodiversity and ecosystem services, which form the foundation of our societies and global economy. So why the financial sector as a non-state actor in the context of the CBD? Well, first, I think it's important to look at what financial services the financial sector is. We are not all the same. We are banks, we are insurers, we are asset managers, we are payment system providers. And we all do different things, and we all have different impacts and dependencies on biodiversity. But the thing that brings us together in this context is that we are the plumbing of the economy. You may not see all of us, but we need to get this plumbing of the economy configured in the right way if we want to get economy and accordingly society moving in the right direction to achieve the transformative whole of society change that we're seeking to achieve through the CBD and GBF. It's also worth noting that we're not pools of vast sums of money that are going unused that can be directed at the drop of a hat. We owe obligations to our clients who have invested with us or to whom we're providing products, and we also owe obligations to shareholders. So yes, we can and must participate in biodiversity positive funds, and I'll talk about more of that in a moment. And for example, we can where they're started by multilateral development banks. And this is important. It's an important role for the sector to play. But it is not the only role, and we mustn't miss the bigger prize here, which is redirecting all of the flows through the financial sector in ways that reduce harm to biodiversity and have a positive impact. This is the major way that private financing in the financial sector can be redirected to help address the biodiversity crisis and to help bridge the financing gap. And on this latter point, it's worth noting that from a public funds perspective, many of these funds will eventually flow through the private sector and private financial flows. So we cannot create a gap by not dealing with the private sector and private financial flows in the GBF. So what is the role for us? Well, I think the first thing is making clear that we have a role and recognizing the role that we play in the economy, engaging with the companies that we invest in and our investors to raise the need to act positively on biodiversity and reduce harmful actions. The second thing is that we can and we should make voluntary commitments. As I've mentioned before, 100 financial institutions across the planet have made pledges under the Finance for Biodiversity Foundation. By way of example of what this means, Aviva, where I'm from, has created a biodiversity policy to give effect to its obligations under the pledge. We've committed £100 million over the next 8 years for nature-based solutions. We've also created a natural capital transition fund. Fellow members Federated Hermes have also created a biodiversity fund and written a white paper outlining their commitments on biodiversity. HSBC, the global bank, has committed $150 million here in East Africa to nature-based carbon projects. My colleague Emily from Storebrand in Norway is heavily involved in the deforestation agenda, with Storebrand aiming to be deforestation-free from their portfolios by 2025. The third way that we contribute to this process is through developing, sharing, and learning from each other on measurements, targets, and reporting publicly. This is a key part of the Finance for Biodiversity pledge and goes to the heart of what Manuel was talking about on effective implementation. For the financial sector, this is complex and it is technical. It is important that we work together with you, the parties and governments across the world, and you let us share our expertise and experience to help you implement the GBF. So in a nutshell, I think coming back to Mel's 2 points that he mentioned today and also previously when we spoke, our role is to facilitate the optimal implementation of the GBF, and the financial sector is ready and willing to make that change, or at least some of us are. And the second thing is that we strengthen the CBD by bringing the plumbing of the economy clearly within its policy aims. But the final point that I will reiterate, and that we've been reiterating throughout our time at these talks, is that it's not good enough to leave it to the voluntary commitments of non-state actors in the context of the financial sector. The reality is that there is only a comparative few of us acting in this way. It is really critical that you as parties create the right policy drivers in the goals of the GBF and the enabling conditions and the targets to ensure that the whole financial sector plays its full role in addressing the biodiversity crisis and gets on board to help us implement the GBF. Thank you.
Thank you, Suresh. And it is interesting because Francis, as co-chair, told us the importance of having an action agenda for resource mobilization. And you have identified some conditions to that. the financial sector, it is willingness to mobilize resources and to facilitate action. But we do need to send a strong political signal, and we do need to enable the conditions to do that. That is so important. So we have heard 5 approaches, 5 experiences from different sectors, but with a common ground, the importance of having an action agenda to implement the GBF. So thank you to all the panelists. So now we still have some minutes to open the floor for Q&A, reflections, or comments. Please just raise your hand if you want to contribute to this important, informative session, and that would be more than appreciated. Please, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Neville Ash from UNEP WCMC. A huge fan of the action agenda, not just to recognise the contribution that non-state actors make, but also to recognise the dependency of success on those contributions. So we know we can't achieve the ambitions of the Global Biodiversity Framework without the action for non-state actors. And we've been working closely with the Government of the Netherlands, with the CBD Secretariat, with other colleagues, as we've heard before, on a complementary and modular commitments platform on area-based conservation. So areas which private sector, public sector, non-state actors are working to protect, to sustainably use, to restore areas of land and sea. And it's the Nature Commitments platform. And like the action agenda, this aims to inspire action, it aims to showcase action, and it aims to also, because it's area-based, very easily feed in to the monitoring of progress in the future towards the ambitions of the Global Biodiversity Framework. So it can feed in to support on Target 3, and the World Database on Protected Areas, the World Database on OECMs, ICCAs and others. It can feed in on restoration and other areas as well. And last month we launched this. We've had 200 commitments now part of the platform, so things are going very well. It's seamlessly integrated with the action agenda, so all commitments that come into the Nature Commitments platform turn up also in the action agenda to contribute in that way. And it's part of this growing family of opportunities for non-state actors to commit action to contribute on the biodiversity agenda. Naturecommitments.org. And we look forward to seeing the action agenda going from strength to strength, both from Sharm El-Sheikh to Kunming and beyond. And it would be interesting to hear more about the and beyond part, the ambitions beyond COP15 for the action agenda, and we look forward to supporting that journey. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your intervention, and thank you for being a fan of the action agenda, and also for explaining us how important it is to keep this gradual process. For sure, as usual, we don't need to start. We don't need to have a clear, not only commitment, but a clear political signal that we all are willing to move this forward. And after that, as it has been with the climate, many other things will come, but we have to start. In the climate debate, it has been interesting that when we started in 2014, it was just a statement. But after that, in Paris, we had a week. And after that, we have a work plan and the figure of the champion. And now we have the race to zero, the race to resilience, and a new work plan. So it is an and also targets subject to be validated by science, and mechanism to start to track progress and to give credibility to the process. No? But we don't need to start. That is the point, and that is why the importance of today's session. So the floor is open for more comments or interventions. Just raise your hand. Please, from the UK.
Thank you, Chair. It's wonderful to see such a wide variety of attendees today and hear about the wealth and range of actions that are being taken. It's fantastic to hear, and it's really encouraging. The UK is committed to securing an ambitious outcome at COP15, and crucially, we believe that non-state actors are key partners in delivering on that, on the GBF, or when it is agreed. The GBF provides an opportunity for society-wide reevaluation of our relationship with nature. Given the extent and the potential consequences of the biodiversity crisis, everyone will benefit from the action, and everybody needs to play a part. And as we've heard today, there are such great things happening that greater visibility should be given to the commitments and the planned actions, both short-term and in the longer term, of non-state actors, so that their contributions and the progress made in implementing them can be understood, they can be acknowledged and encouraged, and we can support the role that the action agenda plays in achieving this. The UK is very proud to support it. We believe an enhanced platform for non-state actors will be crucial to share information on a voluntary basis on their commitments and planned actions, and it will ensure that there's amplification of those messages, and we can really share in that sort of progress. The platform should be simple, it should be flexible, it should cover all the goals and targets of the GBF, and it should be easily usable and readily accessible to promote the sharing of information. Contributors to the platform should be encouraged to provide regular updates on progress made to the delivery of their commitments, and we want to ensure that non-state actors can showcase their contributions in a positive and a meaningful way in recognition of the vital role that they will play alongside other actors in the successful implementation of the GBF. The UK government has been working closely with an ambitious set of businesses over the last few years to drive the global community towards adopting ambitious outcomes at Kunming. And these businesses that we work with recognize the impact that they have on nature and the potential positive changes that they can bring about. And they recognize it, and they're really excited to be part of that agenda. So I suppose finally, we believe that the GBF can set the world on a course towards a nature-positive future in all aspects of society, bringing together a whole-of-society approach with governments, with civil society, and with businesses across the world, working in common and focused on a clear set of ambitious goals and targets. We've worked really hard this week. We're almost there, but we need to look forward. We need to think about the actions and agenda in the future too. Thank you.
Thank you very much to the UK, and thank you for your commitment with the action agenda within the CBD and the GBF. And let me make a short reflection about the action agenda on climate and what happened in Glasgow. Probably today we would have preferred to have a full house event, but it is natural. We are in the beginning of the process. But in the climate in Glasgow, it was amazing. We had probably 50-50 of people assisting to the COP26, 50% of parties, 50% of active non-state actors defining targets, commitments, mobilizing action, defining partnerships, thinking on how to build capacities, to mobilize resources. And that is the natural evolution of this agenda. And it is true, we do need to have an action agenda to deliver. It is the only way to celebrate success of what I am sure we will adopt by the end of the year as part of the COP15. So now I would like to give the floor to the representative of Canada. Please, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Really encouraging and exciting to hear from each of our panelists today. It is illustrative of just the range of action and interest and momentum that's building. I was struck by comments from our presenter from Malaysia talking about the paradigm shift and indicating that there's a greater recognition of both the role that business plays in the challenges as well as the solutions. And I think that we're seeing that more and more, that recognition of just the interdependencies, as well as just the breadth of potential, I think, for increasing recognition of the importance of aligning both actions and financial signals, as well as other areas to addressing our collective challenge. Certainly from a Canadian perspective, we really support and recognize that an ambitious framework and developing and implementing one requires all sectors, all partners, all parts of society, and that whole of society approach as well as a whole of government approach are going to be critical in moving forward. From a Canadian perspective, the role of Indigenous peoples as well is a really central, fundamental, foundational role in partnerships moving forward, and at a domestic level, certainly that's one of our key areas of action and attention. So really pleased to hear as well the comments and building on experiences, including through the local biodiversity outlook and other stories and experiences and paradigms that we see from our Indigenous partners as really central to being able to make progress. I also would like to just comment and reflect on just how valuable having a platform that connects people is, because I think we've talked a lot about different components of the partnerships and individual contributions. I think what's interesting is to see across those sectors, so across the business sector, with local governments, with Indigenous peoples, to see where there's opportunities for those connections between those actions, so that while in a particular sector there may be a focus, it could be a geographic focus, it could be a thematic focus, being able to see where those can be amplified by working together. And so those connections and connecting those platforms and communication across them, I think is a real opportunity and something that would be interesting to explore further. Thank you.
Thank you very much to the representative of Canada, and thank you also for your support in making the COP15 physically possible by the end of the year. I am sure that we will celebrate by the end of the year a good GBF. And let me say something that happened with the Paris Agreement, that after we got the Paris Agreement in 2015, it took like some days to what I could call a emotional hangover. No, it's some time to have a hangover. But just after that, we started to think, what's next? And it is for sure to implement. And when we thought on that, immediately we thought on how important it is to having a non-state actors agenda. So thank you, Canada, for your words. Now I would like to give the floor to representative from Antigua and Barbados, and then in the back. So first her, and then and after that, if somebody else would like to raise your hand, because we don't have too much time, and you will be the last. Okay? So please, you have the floor.
It's great to be here and to feel included in this process. And it's through partnerships and collaborations with governments, IPLC, private sector, that we are going to find the lasting solutions. I am from a small island, and I am energized. I come to these meetings, and the sharing, the capacity building, the networking moves me further on, because I have a role to play in my country to bring about that transformation change. I have to take on different roles and responsibilities to make actions happen at the ground. And I just want to express the strong desire to be here, to be included, to have a voice in decision making, and that's what's gonna bring us together. So I just want everyone to be inspired to do more, leave here with a stronger commitment to make things happen. We have skills, knowledge, capabilities. Let's use it. Let's bring people together. Let's move forward with the change that we need in people. And once that happens, things are just going to move. Thanks for being here.
Thank you very much. It is clear that you have inspired us. Thank you for that. So please, now back.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to all the panelists of this inspiring information session. I'm Tom Brooks, IUCN Chief Scientist, and I wanted to say a word about how IUCN, International Union for Conservation of Nature, is lining up to support the Sharm El-Sheikh to Kunming Action Agenda, and as of next year, the implementation of the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework. For more than a decade, IUCN's membership of more than 200 governments and state agencies, and also now subnational governments, plus more than 1,000 non-governmental organizations and indigenous peoples organizations, has maintained a one-program charter. With the new IUCN program, Nature 2030, adopted by IUCN's membership in the run-up to the 2021 World Conservation Congress in Marseille, a mandate was established for the development of a Contributions for Nature platform to allow all IUCN constituents to document their potential contributions towards global goals for nature as established in the IUCN program and beyond through the Global Biodiversity Framework, through the Paris Agreement, and ultimately through the environment-related Sustainable Development Goals. The platform is wholly spatial, it's light in terms of data entry, and it allows quantitative reporting in terms of contributions towards biodiversity, drawing from documentation in the IUCN Red List of Threatened Species, and towards climate change, drawing from carbon calculation through the Restoration Barometer. It's interoperable with sister platforms like UNEP WCMC's Nature Commitment platforms. And regarding the Sharm El-Sheikh to Kunming Action Agenda, we've been delighted to welcome the CBD Executive Secretary onto the platform's advisory board, specifically to explore the ways in which IUCN's aggregate contributions can be reflected in turn into the Sharm El-Sheikh to Kunming Action Agenda. IUCN stands by to support the action agenda accordingly. Many thanks indeed.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your support. I am sure that we count on you to support the action agenda for the CBD and the GBF. So finally, the last participation, please.
Hi, yes, thank you. I'm with ESCRNet, the International Network for Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights, and I'm really glad that there's such an emphasis on the role of non-state actors in the CBD. I'm a bit concerned in terms of the representation on the panel. I'm glad that Joji is there to represent. However, it seems like there's an imbalance, and so, I do have a question for finance, and I think that we all know that finance, of course, plays a significant role in terms of driving the twin climate and biodiversity crises. And so I'd love to hear more about the commitments that you had mentioned and kind of understanding more about how you're holding some of your clients to the same standard that you're claiming here. So it'd be really helpful to have a bit more. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. So let me start off with Finance for Biodiversity, the organization itself. So how it organizes itself is through a series of working groups. The first is on engagement, so actually engaging with companies, helping the members do that to the best impact. The second is working on measurements, on metrics and impact assessment. And finally, advocacy. So actually the fact that we're here, the fact that we're talking to national governments, trying to get positive movement in the policy sector. And soon we're to start two new areas, one on targets and the second on positive impact. So that's what the foundation does. In terms of the pledge itself, it builds on this, about collaborating and sharing knowledge on biodiversity, continuing to engage with companies, and doing other things in the working groups that I mentioned, but also reporting publicly by 2025. So those are the specific things that we are doing. In terms of Aviva as a company, I've mentioned some of the funds or the biodiversity policy that we are doing. Just coming back to sort of the point Emmanuel just made is that we are in the beginnings of this. We're not at the same stage as climate. In fact, one of the things that we at Aviva, together with a partner of ours, WWF, has called for in the UK is that the UK mandatory transition plans for climate, which are soon to be introduced by the UK government, extend to nature. So I'm not going to sit here and pretend that we're doing everything and that we've solved it. And I also think, I hope it was clear from what I said, we do want a strong and enabling environment because we don't really feel enough of the sectors behind this. But I do think a start is being made and it is going in the right direction.
Thank you very much. Unfortunately, we have to leave this room in 2 minutes. So now, and my apologies to the other panelists, but thank you again for your participation, your active participation. So for closing remarks, I would like to give back the floor to Dr. Hamdallah Sedan.
Thank you very much, Manuel. I would like to thank the panel members for their active participation. And I would like also to thank all the participants for this interactive dialogue. In fact, Manuel, your facilitation of this session has shown the momentum building across a whole society, shaping the elements of action agenda roadmap in the lead to COP15. In this context, Egypt would like to confirm its willingness and support to the action agenda, as we did at COP14 in Sharm El-Sheikh by launching the action agenda during the high-level segment. We are sure that COP15, under the able leadership of China, will not only organize a high-level action day, but will also enhance the agenda forward as a key vehicle for the implementation of the post-2020 global biodiversity framework. To drive forward the action agenda, I would like to recognize Mr. Manuel Polgar Vidal for taking leadership and inspiring others to safeguard biodiversity as the first action agenda champion. Thank you, Manuel, for your personal dedication and energy to the action agenda in moving it forward to COP15 and beyond. I thank you.
Thank you, Hamdallah, for your kindly words, and thank you to you all for being part of this important informative session. So it is clear, we have all recognized the importance of the action agenda as a way to have an effective implementation of what we know it will be a strong global biodiversity framework. Thank you to Egypt, thank you to China, thank you to the Secretariat of the CBD, thank you to the co-chairs and to all the parties, because we know that that would be the only way for an effective implementation. And I am sure that we will be in touch, but also I am sure that in COP15 we will have the opportunity to be together in the high-level segment to have an action day, couple of days, hopefully a week. We don't know yet. But the point is to start to think how to organize sectors and actors, how to start to think on what it should be the targets, to fit those targets with the CBD and GBF objective. So it is a step-by-step process. It is a gradual one, but it will be possible just with your full participation. So we recognize your commitment and thank you again for your participation. So now it is time to adjourn today's informative session. Thank you very much.